Hello everybody, welcome to my channel.
Clark Gable, the enduring king of Hollywood. Clark Gable isn't just a movie star from a bygone era, he's the blueprint. Dubbed the King of Hollywood, Gable defined masculine charisma for generations, playing rugged gentlemen, sharp-tongued rogues, and effortlessly commanding romantic leads. His mix of swagger, sensitivity, and sly humor cemented him as one of the most iconic figures of Hollywood's golden age. Early life and rise to stardom. William Clark Gable was born on February 1, 1901, in Cadiz, Ohio. His childhood wasn't glamorous. He grew up working class, lost his mother early, and bounced between jobs before finding his way into community theater. With persistence, luck, and a whole lot of self-reinvention, Gable transformed himself into an actor who looked like he was born for the camera. His break came when MGM signed him in the early 1930s. Studio executives worried he looked too rough for standard leading man roles, but audiences saw something different, a powerful, magnetic presence the screen had been waiting for. The screen persona that redefined a generation. Gable's style was a cocktail of contradictions that made him unforgettable: rugged but refined, bold but charming, tough but surprisingly tender. He delivered lines with a wink that suggested he understood every contradiction in human nature, and enjoyed them. Throughout the 1930s and 40s, he became the star every studio wanted and every actor tried not to be compared to. His collaborations with actresses like Jean Harlow, Joan Crawford, Claudette Colbert, and Norma Shearer produced some of the era's biggest films. Gone with the Wind and the iconic Rhett Butler. If Gable had done nothing else, his performance as Rhett Butler in Gone with the Wind, 1939, would have secured his legendary status. It was a role tailor-made for him: charming, rakish, cynical, and deeply romantic beneath the bravado. His delivery of the immortal line, "Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn," became one of the most famous moments in movie history, a cinematic mic drop that still echoes today. The film won multiple Oscars and remains one of the most influential productions of all time, with Gable at its heart. Career beyond the Old South. Gable wasn't a one-role wonder. He won an Academy Award for It Happened One Night, 1934, the screwball comedy classic with Claudette Colbert that practically invented the romantic comedy blueprint. He had hits like Mutiny on the Bounty, 1935, San Francisco, 1936, The Hucksters, 1947, and Magambo, 1953, showing he could move through genres with ease. His time in the military during World War II, he enlisted in the U.S. Army Air Forces after his wife Carol Lombard's tragic death, only deepened public admiration for him. He served as an aerial gunner and photographer, making him not just a movie hero, but a real-life one. Final years and lasting legacy. Clark Gable's final film, The Misfits, 1961, paired him with Marilyn Monroe in a haunting, beautiful story that showed both stars in a more vulnerable, modern light. He passed away shortly after filming, at age 59, leaving behind a filmography that continues to define Hollywood glamour. His legacy is woven through modern cinema: the confident leading man, the romantic rogue, the layered masculinity that suggests heart beneath grit. Actors from Harrison Ford to George Clooney owe a stylistic debt to Gable's blueprint. Why he still matters even today. Gable's performances feel fresh. There's a timelessness to his presence, a reminder of when movies were loud with emotion, stars burned bright, and charisma wasn't crafted by media teams but by sheer personal magnetism. Clark Gable didn't just star in Hollywood's golden era, he helped create it. Clark Gable, A deeper look into the man behind the legend, early struggles and unlikely beginnings. Clark Gable didn't arrive in Hollywood polished and ready-made, far from it. As a teenager, he worked in factories, fixed tires, and lived paycheck to paycheck. He wasn't the classic, handsome young leading man at first, either. He was lanky, awkward, and struggled socially. His stepmother, Jenny Dunlap, was the one who encouraged him to explore acting. She helped him develop his voice, refine his speech, and cultivate the sophistication that became his trademark. Gable learned early that confidence doesn't always come naturally. Sometimes you build it brick by brick. His early stage career was modest. He toured with small theater companies, took odd jobs between shows, and even worked as a necktie salesman. But he kept grinding, and the stage eventually led him west. The MGM era. Becoming the king once MGM signed him in the early 1930s, his rise was almost explosive. But it took some careful image shaping to turn him into a star. Studio head Louis B. Mayer wasn't sure Gable was handsome enough. But audiences loved his raw, masculine energy, something missing from the polished, pretty leading men of the time. MGM leaned into that. They gave him tough guy roles early on, often opposite strong women who could match him line for line. By 1934, after the runaway success of It Happened One Night, he was the studio's most valuable actor. The press crowned him the King of Hollywood. And honestly, the crown fit. Gable and the women who shaped him. Gable's career glowed bright. But his personal life was complicated and often painful. Carole Lombard, the love of his life. Gable was married multiple times, but his relationship with actress Carole Lombard stands apart. She was quick-witted, warm, and fiercely independent, a perfect match for his grounded, understated charm. Their marriage became one of Hollywood's most beloved love stories. Tragically, Lombard died in a plane crash in 1942 while returning from a war bond tour. Gable was devastated. He enlisted in the military soon after, saying he wanted to do something that mattered. Friends later said he was never quite the same. Other relationships before Lombard. Gable married older women who helped him financially and professionally. This led to endless gossip, but behind the chatter was a simple truth. Gable built his career through loyalty, mentorship, and sometimes unconventional partnerships. Military service. Heroism beyond the screen. After Lombard's death, Gable joined the U.S. Army Air Forces. He flew on combat missions over Europe as a gunner and photographer, an extraordinarily risky assignment for someone so famous. Hitler himself reportedly placed a reward on Gable's capture. He completed 5 missions, earned several medals, and returned to Hollywood with a deeper sense of purpose. Late career, reinvention and vulnerability. After the war, Hollywood had changed. New stars were rising, tastes were shifting, and Gable, though still adored, had to adapt. He took on more emotionally layered roles. The Hucksters, 1947, showed his cynical side. Run Silent, Run Deep, 1958, pushed him into darker territory. And The Misfits, 1961, written by Arthur Miller, gave him a chance to shed the old King of Hollywood persona. Working with Marilyn Monroe and Montgomery Clift, Gable delivered one of his most poignant performances, weary, introspective, human. Many critics consider it the finest work of his career. A sudden farewell. Gable suffered a heart attack shortly after finishing The Misfits and died on November 16, 1960. His son, John Clark Gable, was born 4 months later. Hollywood mourned deeply. It felt like the end of an era. Legacy. Why Clark Gable still reigns. Clark Gable's staying power is wild when you think about it. Decades after his death, he's still everywhere, in the DNA of modern leading men, in film schools dissecting his charm, in the cultural shorthand of classic Hollywood. His impact lives on because he represented authenticity when the system was built on artifice, charm that never felt forced, masculinity that held room for vulnerability, presence that didn't require big speeches or flashy theatrics. He remains the measuring stick for screen charisma, the guy who walked into cinema history with a crooked grin and a voice that could make a one-liner sound like destiny. Clark Gable, expanded biography, legacy, and hidden stories. His work ethic, the quiet engine behind the stardom for all the glamour around him. Gable was a grinder, a serious worker who treated acting like a craft, not a crown. He wasn't a diva, didn't fuss about his trailer, and didn't cultivate the mysterious, star persona many of his contemporaries embraced. If anything, he tried to downplay the myth. He showed up early, knew his lines cold, kept his co-stars relaxed, rarely complained, treated crew members with unusual respect. Directors often said he was the easiest major star to work with, a guy who made everyone else look good because he didn't try to hog the spotlight. And ironically, that humility made him more magnetic on screen. That famous mustache in the Gable look, around the time MGM was shaping his image, Gable started wearing a small, neat mustache, partly because he thought it looked better, partly because it softened his square jaw and intense eyes. It's wild, but that simple grooming choice became a worldwide trend, was copied by millions of men, became a defining symbol of 1930s to 40s masculinity. Tailors even talked about the Gable silhouette: broad shoulders, narrow waist, slightly relaxed posture. He didn't just star in movies, he became a fashion template. His relationship with fame: Gable wasn't starstruck by his own celebrity. He liked simple things: hunting and fishing, car rides on empty roads, spending time on his ranch, wearing casual clothes far from photographers in Hollywood parties. He was known as the guy who'd sneak out early to avoid the fuss. He understood fame was part of the job, but he never lived for it. A complicated relationship with Hollywood glamour: Gable often felt like a bit of an outsider in the glamorous MGM circle. His background was humble, and he never entirely shook that feeling. He once said, "The only reason these people invite me places is because I've been in a few movies." It wasn't true, people adored him, but it tells you how grounded he remained. The story behind It Happened One Night, this 1934 screwball comedy, almost didn't happen. Gable was essentially loaned out to Columbia Pictures as punishment for arguing with MGM. He didn't want to do the movie. Claudette Colbert didn't want to do it either. The entire shoot felt chaotic and rushed. And then, it became the first film ever to win the Big Five Oscars. Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Gable, Best Actress, Colbert, Best Screenplay. Gable's performance, confident, playful, razor sharp, redefined what a romantic lead could be. So yeah, The Punishment Project turned him into the king. The Gone with the Wind casting saga: Gable didn't want to play Rhett Butler at first. He thought the character was too beloved in the novel, too iconic to satisfy everyone's expectations. Producer David O. Selznick practically begged him. Eventually, MGM worked out a financial deal, and Gable agreed, but he insisted on one thing: he did not want to cry on screen. Selznick convinced him otherwise for that emotional moment near the end, one of the rare times Gable showed such vulnerability in a major film. The result? One of the most memorable performances in cinema history. On-screen style. Why Gable pops even today. Modern viewers often notice how contemporary Gable feels. His acting style was natural, understated, free of theatrical exaggeration, grounded in realism. While many 1930s actors still carried stage habits, Gable talked, moved, and reacted like a real person caught on camera. That's why his performances age so well. He wasn't flashy, he was real. Behind the scenes of The Misfits, this film was a perfect storm. Marilyn Monroe was struggling emotionally. Montgomery Clift was wrestling with personal demons. Arthur Miller's marriage to Monroe was falling apart. The Nevada heat was brutal. John Huston drank through half the shoot. Gable, the oldest member of the cast, became the stabilizing force on set. He was professional, patient, and protective, especially of Monroe. But the physical strain of the demanding role, riding wild horses, long hours in intense heat, worried friends. He died only days after the shoot wrapped. Some believe the film literally pushed him to his limit. Cultural impact. The blueprint for the modern leading man Clark Gable gave cinema the archetype of the flirt with depth, the tough guy with heart, the gentleman rogue, the flawed hero with charisma. You can see echoes of Gable in Harrison Ford, George Clooney, Warren Beatty, Brad Pitt, Idris Elba, Ryan Gosling. In his cool, understated mode, if Hollywood leading men speak with quiet confidence, flirt with a half smile, or mix toughness with vulnerability, that's Gable's legacy in motion. How fans remember him? Ask old Hollywood fans and you'll get variations of the same sentiment. He made it look easy. He was the guy every man wanted to be. He treated everyone well. He had presence without arrogance. In a business built on ego, Clark Gable was famously ego-light. That's a big part of why he endures. Clark Gable, even more stories, myths, and layers behind the icon. His voice, the unexpected secret weapon. Gable's voice is one of those instantly recognizable Hollywood treasures, warm, confident, slightly mischievous, with that faint Midwestern edge he never fully erased. Funny story? MGM originally thought his voice might be a problem. Early Hollywood sound tests were brutal. Many silent stars were suddenly exposed by accents, squeaky timbres, or awkward enunciation. But when Gable spoke, boom, depth, rhythm, gravitas. It was a voice made for microphones. Critics said he sounded like a man who could command a room, someone who had actually lived, a guy who flirted with a single sentence. That vocal confidence became one of his defining traits. The Gable smile. The imperfect charm. Gable was self-conscious about his teeth early in his career, especially on the stage. He had dental issues in his 20s, which the studio remedied with expensive dental work. But even afterward, he didn't have a perfectly symmetrical Hollywood smile. And guess what? Audiences loved it. His grin looked real, human, slightly wolfish, playful, but not posed. It made him approachable, an essential counterbalance to his rugged looks. Rumors, myths, and Hollywood lore. Gable attracted as many stories as movies. Some true, some exaggerated, some wildly imaginative. The undershirt incident. During it happened one night. Gable famously removed his shirt to reveal no undershirt. Sales of undershirts reportedly plummeted across America. Was the story true? Mostly, it did trend downward. That's how powerful his image was. The Lewis relationship. There were rumors he had an affair with screenwriter Anita Loos, author of Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. Loos adored him. But most historians think the relationship was affectionate, not romantic. Loos once joked, "Clark didn't flirt with me. He treated me better, like a friend." The eccentric fans. Gable received gifts that ranged from tasteful to unhinged. Handwritten poems, locks of hair, homemade quilts, drawings of him as a medieval knight, and once, a cake shaped like a saddle. He responded with good humor and polite notes, even to the odd ones. How Gable treated his co-stars. Gable had a reputation as a gentleman, especially with actresses. He didn't hit on his co-stars, didn't use his fame to get favors, and kept things strictly professional. Jean Harlow called him one of the few men in Hollywood you can trust blindfolded. Vivian Leigh, Scarlett O'Hara, told friends, Clark was kind, patient, and surprisingly bashful. Marilyn Monroe, who struggled with anxiety, said Gable made her feel safe. She called him Papa Gable, a sweet nickname that revealed how nurturing he could be. The Carole Lombard marriage. More details. Gable and Lombard were couple goals before the term existed. They were opposites. She was bubbly, loud, hilarious. He was quiet, grounded, dry-witted. Their home life was wonderfully normal. She cooked, he did repairs, they kept animals, they played practical jokes on each other. Lombard once bought him a prize cow for their ranch as a surprise. He laughed for a week. When she died, Gable kept her room exactly as it was. He rarely spoke of her afterward, but her picture stayed on his bedside table for the rest of his life. Gable's relationship with his own image. Gable had a love-hate relationship with being the king. He appreciated fans but disliked the pedestal. He once said, "I'm glad people enjoy what I do. But me? I'm just a lucky guy who got a break." He didn't think he was the best actor, he thought he was the most fortunate. Even after he was rich, he maintained his ranch, did chores, fixed fences, drove his own trucks, cleaned his own boots. He genuinely liked physical labor. It made him feel real in a world of glamour. Gable's political and social views, carefully summarized, Gable wasn't political in public. He avoided endorsements and deflected political questions, preferring to keep his views private. But he was known for quietly supporting equality on film sets, treating black crew members with respect, walking off a set once due to unfair treatment of a black extra. He didn't make speeches about justice, he acted on it. A hidden daughter? The Judy Lewis story. This is one of Hollywood's bittersweet secrets. Before he married Lombard, Gable had an affair with actress Loretta Young during the filming of The Call of the Wild, 1935. Young became pregnant and later gave birth to a daughter, Judy Lewis. Young raised Judy secretly to avoid scandal. For decades, the rumor circulated quietly. Judy eventually learned the truth as an adult. Gable never publicly acknowledged Judy, but they did meet once briefly. She was too young to understand who he was.
Bye bye. Thanks for watching. Bye.